Hi everyone, so welcome to this Thursday video. If you're new, my name is Caroline. I'm a UK based physics lecturer and I'm on conference this week in Boston. Only I'm not in Boston, I am here in the UK because obviously this horrible COVID pandemic has meant there's been no travel and the conference has gone virtual. So I thought I'd share a little bit about what it's like to go to a virtual conference. As you can see, I'm not ready yet for the conference. I've just been out walking the dog. It's running on local Eastern American time, which means that it's 5 hours behind my local UK time. So there's a session happening at 2 o'clock and at 4 o'clock in the US, and that's going to correspond to 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock here in the UK. So that's when I'm going to need to be logged in, ready to watch the talks. I've been going to this conference now for 9 years, and I'll explain in a bit how you kind of work your way up from going to being a participant and attending the conference all the way up to actually being on the organising committee. So I've got roles at this conference. I'm a topic convener and a session chair, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit. But right now I'm going to lose all my kind of outdoor walking gear, going to sort myself out, get myself some food, finish up my last bits of work for the day with my regular day university job, and then I'll hop back on here and I'll share a little bit more about life as an academic going to a virtual conference. So I'm not quite ready yet for the conference, but I am at least not in my outdoor walking gear. So I've been going to this conference now for 9 years. I've missed a couple of years, but in my area of physics, this is one of the main conferences that we get to go to. So there's going to be several thousand people that will attend, and there'll be multiple sessions happening simultaneously. So I first went as an employee of a company, and I'm now there representing my university. And I presented my work there, and my students present their work at this particular conference. So it is a really good place to be able to exchange scientific ideas, see what other people are working on. I've met some of my best collaborators by going to a conference. And this year I was really looking forward to going to the USA. It was going to be in a really nice location in Boston. It would have been really interesting because right now it's the election results in the US, so I would have been there during the results release. But here I am in the UK, and to be honest, I'm just really pleased that I get to go to the conference in a virtual capacity. But one of the perks of being at a virtual conference is that I can still do my day job. So I've been to the university campus this week, very quiet. I got a little bit of footage, I'll include it now, but it's a really quiet campus. We're about to go back into a lockdown here in England, so literally people were coming on, delivering their classes and then leaving the campus. But it was fine, we had class and that was all good. But yeah, so the benefit of not being in Boston is I can continue to teach my students, do my marking. If a conference pops up and it's during your academic teaching semester, you have to make an official request in order to be able to go to that conference. So you have to request the time to go, and you have to ensure that the class that you're covering is either moved, rearranged, or has adequate academic cover to make sure that the students don't have any disruption in their education. So of course I didn't have to do any of that because I'm not going anywhere, so I was able to teach my class as normal. So I will show you in a little bit the setup of my desk. It is a virtual conference, which means that really they only see this part of you, so you can wear comfy jogging bottoms and slippers if you want to. I tend to, I guess, wear slightly more formal attire if I'm going to be actively session chairing, where other people will see me. And I guess if I'm just going to be watching talks, as I am this evening, I can be a little bit more relaxed in my dress code. But yeah, I'm now going to go get a cup of coffee, do a few more emails, and then I will show you my desk layout ready for the conference to start. Okay, so here we have the desk. I've got my laptop. When I'm session chairing, I tend to look at the laptop because then my webcam picks me up and I'm effectively looking at the audience. But this evening, because I'll be watching the talks just from my comfort of my own office, I can watch them on my bigger computer screen. I've got a notebook so I can make notes as we go along. I've got some water, I've got a candle that I might light. I've got my trusty pencil case should I need it. One of my favourites if you watched my favourites video for October. I've also got some headphones so that I can listen without having to disturb the entire household when I'm watching these talks later on tonight. So that is my setup. If I am being the session chair, then I need to be fairly well lit. So actually I keep my my lighting on. That's probably saturated the whole screen now. But yeah, if I'm being a session chair, I'll keep one of my lights on just so that I'm kind of nicely illuminated and people can see me. But tonight I can be a little bit more relaxed. I can turn that light off and I can kind of light the candle and enjoy watching the talks, as I said, from the comfort of my office. So that's the setup. I'm going to turn everything on and then the conference will get underway. So if you're wondering how this all actually works, this was a conference that I did pay to attend. So I didn't pay the normal fee that we'd pay if we were actually going to a physical location, but I did pay a conference registration fee, and that gives me a login. And then I can use that login to log in and see the full conference programme. And when there's live sessions happening, I can choose to join that live session. Now, if I'm joining as an audience member, my microphone is automatically muted and I don't have any video camera, so I can't interrupt the session when I join as an audience participant. If I am session chairing, then I log into the system using a slightly different process. And that means then I have more privileges when I log in, and it means that I can invite people to share their microphone and to share their video and to share their slides and their screen. So what I did last night with the other co-chair is that we logged into the room first, and then our speakers in the session then joined us in that virtual room. We all had a chat to make sure everybody was okay. We explained how the timing was going to work, how the questions were going to work, and then the speakers all muted their microphones, the audience members then joined, and then we were able then to start the session. And one by one, each of the speakers shared their screen, presented their slides, and then we had a Q&A afterwards. Now, if a speaker was missing, so let's say they were in a time zone where they couldn't present, or for some reason they were unable to attend the event, they could send in a pre-recorded talk. So we could then play the pre-recorded talk, and inevitably there'd be somebody there who'd be able to take questions who was involved in the preparation of that scientific paper. And then for the Q&A, rather than having the people watching ask their question in person, because you only get a fairly short amount of time for the Q&A session, what we encouraged people to do was to write their question in the chat. So there's like a little function on the side where you can type messages to each other. And then as one of the session chairs, we would read out their questions and relay them to the speaker, who could then answer them. And the really nice thing about that method was if we couldn't answer all the questions, when the speaker had finished giving their presentation and doing their Q&A in the allotted time, they could then go back into this chat area and answer any outstanding questions. So that was actually really, really nice. And when you're doing the chat, you get three options. You can talk directly just to one person, or you can talk to anybody involved in that particular session. So as I said, there's multiple sessions happening simultaneously, and you can elect to talk to people in the session that you're live engaging with. Or you can send in a message out to everybody at the entire conference, which is not something you want to do accidentally. So I very much stayed in the session chat and in talking to my colleagues one-to-one in the private chat. So that's a bit about the mechanics of how it works. Have to say the software was really good. So as session chairs and speakers, we all had our login credentials given to us before the weekend. So it meant that on Sunday night I could have a practice. I logged in with other session chairs from all around the world, all in different time zones, and we were able to practice getting talks to open and close, working this kind of chat function and doing the Q&A. But for timing, because if you're giving a speech and you're watching your presentation, it can be quite hard to see anything else on the screen. Rather than like holding up, you have 3 minutes to go, you have 1 minute to go, we actually instead decided to say that verbally. So as the speaker was progressing, we had a little alarm that went off, so they knew they had 5 minutes left, another alarm that went off when they had a couple of minutes left, and then we could interject if they only had a minute left by just making our microphone live, a session chair, and saying, just so you know, you have a minute to go, and they could wrap up their talk. And I'm really grateful to my co-chair last night, because she was the one who had set up her phone or her timer and had all the different alarms set at the correct timing point. And that's the other really nice thing about conference chairing. Typically you do it with at least one other person. So I session chaired with a lovely scientist last night. I'm actually session chairing with the same scientist again tomorrow night. And it just makes everything so much more fun and easier, because you've got somebody else there who's also working the system at the same time. And it does mean that if anything were to happen, one of you can focus on fixing the problem whilst the other one can focus on continuing to run the session. But actually, having said that, because it was a virtual session and it was being run by a professional kind of software, we actually had a hidden technical chair. So they stayed behind the scenes. You wouldn't be aware of them necessarily if you were in the audience, but should anything happen or should we need a pre-recorded talk to be run for us, the tech chair would step in and they'd do that action. So that was really, really good. But as I said, tonight I am just watching the talks, so I'll be somebody who will be typing in my questions in the chat. It's really fun because I can see my colleagues, so I can see my students are in the virtual audience, I can see my professors are in the virtual audience, and I can see all the people that I would usually get to network with and chat when I go physically to this conference. They're also in these chats, so I can have like virtual chats with them, which is actually really, really nice. But there's one other thing I want to share about this conference, and that's networking. So I'll be right back and I'll share a little bit about networking once I've watched the next talk. Okay, so I'll take these out. So it's going really well. I won't shout at you with my headphones in. I'm sorry I can't actually show you the conference talks themselves, but it is, as I said, a paid-for conference, and I suspect the organisers wouldn't be best pleased if I started streaming it on the internet. But the event is going really well. One thing I did want to just share is how are we doing networking? So a huge part of going to a conference is actually getting to talk to your colleagues from around the world. So you have coffee sessions, we have a dinner, there's sometimes an evening reception. At this particular conference there's an industry kind of showcase stand thing that happens. So all the top industry providers of equipment, technical detectors, specifications of kit that I want to go and talk about with maybe the manufacturers. I want to meet my colleagues from the different labs around the world, see what they're researching, share what we're researching, see if there's any going to be project opportunities for students. It can be a good place to find jobs. So much goes on in the conference in terms of networking, and I was intrigued to see how the organiser would going to deal with this in a virtual format. It's really neat. So they have a industry trade stand area still, and it means that all the industry suppliers have their own stand, and it's obviously a virtual stand, so it's a button that I click on, and if I click on it I go directly through to their kind of company, and I can talk with somebody who would have been physically attending the conference had it gone ahead. And then for the networking, the way it's working is they have a networking room, but rather than just going in and hanging out in this room, you go in and then the conference organisers match you with somebody else who's in the networking room. You get 5 minutes to have a chat. At the end of the chat you can decide if you want to keep talking, I think, or you can go your separate ways. And then the conference will match you with somebody else in the networking room. And you never meet the same person twice when you're in that networking virtual environment. And I think that's a really fun way and a really kind of innovative way of getting people to be able to meet each other throughout the conference. So yeah, it's a bit like speed dating for scientists. I think my student was going to have a go at doing it today, so I'll be interested to see how they found it if they did it. But I think it's a really nice way of trying to allow us to be able to network. So that, combined with the kind of the chat function where you can talk privately to colleagues, you can also arrange to have private like live video stream meetings with colleagues, that's really good. And the fact that I can go and visit the industry trade stands, that's all super organised. So actually it's a very well organised conference put together, I think, in an incredibly short amount of time. But as a participant, it means that the event is then really enjoyable. And from a scientific point of view, I'm still able to do all the science and pretty much a decent amount of networking that I'd like to do if I'd gone in person. Obviously, I do miss the evening reception, you know, the wine and the nibbles and the evening dinner. None of that's happening. But in terms of the science content, it's pretty good. So I've got one more session now to log back in and watch. I hope it was interesting finding out a little bit more about virtual conferences. Tomorrow I'll be back doing my day job throughout the day, and I'll be here at 9 o'clock UK time in the evening, session chairing again, and then the conference ends on Friday. But have a good few days, look after yourself. If you like all things academic, do hit like, do hit subscribe. Have a really good weekend, and I will be back here on Monday with another academic video. So I hope to see you then. Take care, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.